guys, welcome back to an Askew View podcast. I'm Travis Hayward here with Jordan Brandis, and we are here this week to talk about one of my personal favorites of Kevin's, and actually one of my favorite movies ever, Clerks II, the sequel to his original debut flick, and we're going to dissect it and talk about what makes this movie so special.
I mean, the long-awaited sequel. I mean, this is one of those films no one ever thought would happen because it'd been, over a decade since the first one.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very long gap there. It's 12 years since the first one was released in theaters, and it's actually even longer than that since because the first one had actually been made about a year before it was released, so it because of the festival circuit and everything. So this is this was probably close to more of like a 15-year gap between those guys.
Yeah, which is, again. I mean, almost 2 decades is significant. You have to wonder if the audience is there. You have to wonder if people still care about these characters. Although he'd been bringing them back and forth throughout, Reboot and stuff like that. They do show up, but this is the first time we've really spent time with them in, like you said, about 15 years. So why do it? Why make the film?
Well, based on my knowledge of what had occurred at that time, Kevin was feeling kind of was a little bummed about the box office and critical reception of Jersey Girl, which was the first movie he had made after Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And was also the first movie he had ever written and directed that was not set in the View Askewniverse. In Jersey Girl, I know it's got its lovers and its haters. I personally love it. I think it's a sweet little movie, but a lot of people at the time kind of wrote it off as.
I'm not the biggest fan of Jersey Girl, but it will need to be revisited.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about it eventually. We'll get to that episode, but yeah, it's it didn't get the reception Kevin was hoping for, and it's really more of like a safe. I mean, it doesn't honestly. A lot of it doesn't really feel like a Kevin Smith film for the most part because it's right. Also PG-13, and it's.
But then going back to this, Clerks II very much feels like a Kevin Smith film. Like it has his voice throughout the whole film. You can just tell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it really, the reason that he wanted to go back to the well and revisit these characters again was because due to the the lack of success of Jersey Girl, he felt like, hey, I want to kind of go back to my roots and re-examine doing just straight up. Just the straight up, perverse comedies like we always did.
Right. Although he hadn't
back to the heavy stuff here.
He hadn't really been gone that long. I mean, there wasn't a giant gap between Reboot and Clerks II. And it wasn't like he took a massive break, came out of retirement, and did this. It was just sort of like no, that was a bad idea. I'm just going to try this now and see. That seemed to work before. I'll do this.
Yeah, and it's you're right. It really wasn't that much of a gap, but because I think Jersey Girl was 2003, 2004, somewhere in that region, and then Clerks II comes in 2006. So it's really not that much. It wasn't really much of a gap, but at the same time, I think it's. And he did receive some criticism about that. This one didn't work, so he's going back to his old familiar characters right away. But it's a movie that he really wanted to do because it really. And we're also going to touch on this point later as well, but more in depth. But he wanted to make a movie that sort of, that really spoke to how he's feeling in life right now, all the things that have changed in his own personal life. There's a lot of symbolism in Clerks II that do kind of, bring that to light. Like, for example, in the opening scene of Clerks II, when the quick stop burns down, that's basically, Kevin saying that, because I think this may have been the first movie Kevin had made since moving to Los Angeles. So that was kind of, the quick stop burning down is kind of like a symbol of, Kevin's Jersey life is dead now. Now we're moving on.
It's him moving on, like literally moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he seems to be at his best when he does autobiographical films. But the real question becomes, and we talked about this, last week, hadn't he just closed out the View Askewniverse? I mean, didn't he make it this big thing with Reboot? Like, hell, he even brought in God to close the book on the View Askewniverse.
Exactly. At the end of Strike Back, God appears with the book, with the View Askewniverse book, and closes it at the end. It's supposed to, be the end of the story. But, and I didn't even notice this until, if you on the Clerks II DVD, there's a documentary that explains all this. But if you look closely in that scene in Strike Back, when she closes the book, there's actually a bookmark on the page that says "The End." There's a bookmark with still a little section more to go. So Kevin intentionally
it was sort of just in case, in case I change my mind, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's he actually intentionally set that up just in case he ever wanted to come back into the universe again. But
okay. That being said, and I think clearly I know your answer, but let's talk about this objectively. Do you think it was a good idea to come back to the universe, to come back to these characters?
I personally, I feel like it was a good idea, and it eventually did pan out for them. But I thought it was a good idea because it was not just in the sense of. I also completely understand why Kevin felt the need to do it, but at the same time, not to just provide like more of a sense of comfort for himself, but also, it really, when you see the finished product, at the end of the day, Kevin really wanted to make a movie that spoke about, himself and his friends, his family, his life now, what better way to do that than to do it with the two characters that he did that with in the first place, so it really made sense for him to be able to go back and do that.
I know. You're right. It definitely, because they've evolved and the audience has evolved with them. We were talking in our very first episode about how it spoke to the not pre-college, like mid-college crowd of clerks of, they don't quite know where their lives are at, but they're still trying to figure it out. But now, 15 years later, they better have their lives in order, and everybody else around them does, except them, and they're still in the same place. And that really speaks to, I don't want to say disenfranchised, but the people that still don't know what the hell is going on in their lives, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. In this movie, these guys are 32, 33, and they're still, just trying to figure everything out. They just have their day-to-day routine, is suddenly gone. So, the quick stops burned down. They need to figure out something else with their life, and they decide to move into fast food. Instead of convenience stores.
It's the next logical step.
Yeah, is that a step up from convenience stores? Or?
Probably. Yeah. Although, to be fair, they're definitely dealing with way more customers. You can't just ignore them now.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you really can't. Yeah, it's with this movie, they end up, after the quick stop burns down, they end up going to the local Mewes, which is sort of the View Askew version of McDonald's. And,
which after what happened in Dogma, I'm amazed it's still there. Loki killed their CEO. Yeah,
exactly. That's another. Yeah, I never really thought about that before. That's great.
Theoretically, the whole board of directors, except for one person, is just gone.
Yeah, maybe. The Good Samaritan. Maybe she took over the company at that point.
But you didn't say God bless you. You get a flight.
You're so lucky.
That's the thing, though. This is a working, functioning universe, right? So what happens in one movie should affect the other movie. So clearly, movies survived. They managed somehow. Loki's tantrum didn't do much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're still there, and actually, they do also because Movies is also in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back for a quick minute. They go inside, but yeah, it's in this one. It's really interesting to see them make that shift because it's fast food is. It's still it's similar to I guess, being a convenience store clerk in the sense where, you still do have to, deal with customers on the regular and everything, but it's more, this one, the responsibilities are a little bit different. I mean, at the convenience store, the most food prep you'd have to do is probably just make the coffee or,
right.
pop some.
And that's an almost mindless task.
Yeah. This, it's like, no, you actually have to, prepare the Egg McMuffins and the
and that's what said. I was surprised that they had Randal on cook. He was in cook prep. He actually had the more complicated stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense. And he's the one that had like the useless job at the video store, where he just had to sit around all day. That's why he was.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want him touching my food, but he does. I mean, but if you look at the film, he really does seem to get a handle on it. He's actually like mocking Elias that unless it's a transformer, you won't make the fries right and stuff like that. Like right. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he knows how to make the fries. You see him flipping the sausage patties in the morning when they open the store. Yeah, it's like he knows what he's doing.
Although to be fair, the other side is him talking directly with the customers on a regular basis. So maybe he's better in back. Maybe they're just a joint decision.
Yeah, especially when he rips that Lord of the Rings fan for
I made fun of Lord of the Rings so much it made some guy puke.
Yeah,
that's still one of my favorite monologues.
Me too. It's just that whole scene. It's probably one of the most popular, like, ever since when this movie came out, it was around the time of. That was around the same time that YouTube started to come out, and I remember just when there were so many clips from this movie that ended up making it onto YouTube, because this was around the time YouTube was first created, before they had really caught on and had their own original content, and a lot of just your everyday YouTube users. At that time, it was just mostly just movie clips or clips from comedians or just stuff like that. It was just kind of small videos like that. But I remember this movie had so much, like pretty much the whole movie was on YouTube because people.
Well, yeah, because it's set up well. Yeah, anytime the two of them get going, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just every discussion they have in this movie is crazy. even the Anne Frank the difference between Anne Frank and Helen.
Anne Frank versus Helen Keller. Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently rewatched it. Like, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it's like. Anne Frank was definitely one. No, that was Helen Keller.
But this still almost didn't happen. Let's be honest. So, what happened with Jeff Anderson? Because he was the linchpin in this. Yeah, he was. And it's actually kind of, not exactly, but kind of similar to something that happened recently with the upcoming Clerks 3. In this one, Jeff originally had passed. He said no, that he didn't want to come back and do it because at that point in time, Jeff Anderson really, at that point in time, Clerks 2, I think, was kind of the movie that really got him going in terms of being an actual actor, because prior to that, he only had maybe 2 or 3 credits to his name, and that was mostly Kevin stuff. The first Clerks, and then Dogma, and then I think something. And even Dogma's like 2 minutes. Yeah, and Dogma, like 3 lines. He's barely in it. So it's and the Clerks cartoon. That's true. Yep. Clerks cartoon has him front and center, at least. Yeah, that's true. So there was that as well. But it's just mostly, it was mostly just Kevin stuff up until that point, and he didn't. I think a lot of that had to do with. I do know that. Kevin and Jeff had a bit of a falling out following the first Clerks, because Jeff had felt like because the actors on the first Clerks didn't get any money for it whatsoever, because it's an independent film, but but the even after it was bought and picked up by Miramax, the only 2 people that really got paid on that were Kevin and Scott, and that's it, so when it was bought. So, I think Jeff felt kind of burned by that at the time, and
with Kevin and Scott being much younger, it was like, oh, we made this, we're responsible for it, blah, 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 so there was just kind of, like an argument about that at the time. And I think, Jeff just kind of didn't really, feel the need so much to, at some point, I feel like he kind of hated the fact he played Randal. He was just kind of like, man, this is, everybody recognizes me for this, and I hate people, and blah, blah, blah. But what ended up convincing him, though, was Kevin ended up explaining, like, what he had in mind for it, and had said to him, there's no point in me even writing this thing if you're not even just a little bit interested. And Jeff was like,
they're
okay to. He's like,
what, man,
go ahead.
You need both of them.
Yeah, yeah. And Jeff was like, okay, man, go ahead and write it. But he didn't like actually say yes or sign on or anything like that. He just because he wanted to see like what exactly they were going to be doing after all this time. And after reading it and seeing like, that this movie really, as where the first one, this one still is very much Dante's movie in the sense of, like him finding out, where he is in life, where he wants to be in life. And, ultimately he's the main antagonist of this, or main protagonist. But at the same time, this movie really delves a lot more into Randal's psyche, especially when we get to the second and third act. Yeah, and it about how he's losing his best friend, and he feels that that they always had it good before, and that Dante is running after something that he feels he should have because everyone else has it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, and it just it kind of and I feel like that whole, I'm sure it was that scene in particular, the jail scene, where Randal kind of opens up and, breaks down about, like what he really wants and expects from Dante. And I feel like that, that's really Randal's moment to shine. And I feel like that's kind of what cemented, Jeff ended up saying yes to the project.
I could see that. I mean, because he needs that moment. And he really was just sort of he was a supporting character in the first Clerks. The first Clerks is really about Dante. The camera stays on Dante, and it occasionally goes to the video store, and occasionally, Randal pops up from time to time to say something funny. And it's still sort of the case here, but they tend to get equal screen time. And you really do. I mean, the whole teardrops falling on my head scene at the go-kart track that's all about Randal. It really is. And he's the one that moves things forward in this film. And it really, it really is about him, and it does him justice. It does. But, I mean, so we've talked about this before a little bit, and we, in previous episodes as well. The characters in Kevin Smith films sort of speak as for Kevin. Do you think Randal took over that instead of Dante this time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at a certain point, yeah, definitely, because I feel like it's sort of like, I feel like it's sort of the Dante movie, like pretty much about 2/3 of the way, and then the last third is the Randal movie, Randal, like that. Well, like it does kind of, like Kevin's using Dante to speak for himself. Like when Dante sees that the Quick Stop's burned down, and now he has to find, like a new thing for his life, and the falling in love with Becky, like the dance sequence scene. I mean, right. That, like showing, that, Kevin, found a wife, Jennifer.
Right. So if anything, Randal's almost like his subconscious speaking, right? Yeah. If Dante is himself, Randal's him talking to himself.
Pretty much, yeah, because that's where I was going with that. Anyways, like once it gets to, the point where Randal says, I would buy the Quick Stop and reopen it myself. It's, that's basically Kevin saying, like, hey, let's go back to the well. Let's go back to our roots. It's still worth salvaging. We had the time of our lives doing this, making these movies. Let's go back, for, it could work out if we go back to this and start doing this again. So it's kind of, like him putting that into the movie through Randal.
It's strange. Almost any other director, you could tell when they get self-reflective, start talking about themselves, and it almost feels like a form of masturbation. Like, look how cool I am. Look how great I am in doing this. Let's talk about my friends and stuff like that. But with Kevin Smith, it works. He's one of the only directors I can think of where it doesn't feel really egotistical. It feels like he's having a conversation rather than, look how awesome me and my friends are. Look, we're blowing stuff up. We're around hot. Like, Michael Bay is the best example of this.
That's exactly where I was going with that,
But Kevin Smith, who's almost the anti-Michael Bay, is... I mean, the story I was reading recently where Michael Bay, on the commentary for Bad Boys, kept complaining how each scene would be better if you just had more of a budget. How the budget wasn't big enough. It was a huge budget to begin with. It was like $65 million or something, and he considered that like an indie film. As opposed to Kevin, which works on almost no money and still finds a way to make it work.
Exactly. I mean, this movie, I think, was $5 million, if I'm not mistaken, and it's like you know,
if that,
and it's
and they got Rosario Dawson in there, for that price,
for that price, and then also, I mean, not only that, but because I mean, obviously at this point, you know, it's like he's had him around for a while, and you know they're doing it as a favor to him, but you know he's got Jason Lee, who is big on My Name Is Earl at this point,
right?
He's got Ben Affleck, who's, you know, like the biggest movie star in the world at this point, you know, so it's like...
Even if it's one line, he's still in the movie.
Yeah, so it's...
That's unsanitary, that's all I'm saying.
And then, there's him, and then there's, I mean, Jason Lee actually kind of has a supporting role in this. I mean, he's only in the one scene, but he's got, you know, like, it's a really big, important scene, like, kind of a pivotal scene in the movie where, you know, he's basically just bogging down on Randal, and, you know, Randal starts to, that's kind of the point where Randal starts to realize, you know, like, what am I going to be when Dante's gone? You know, he's the only person that, you know, that really has my back.
It's a massive turning point in the film. It's almost where things switch over from Dante to Randal. So we're going to take a short break and then dive a little bit deeper into the almost end of the View Askew universe, the second ending to the View Askew universe. There's one more. There's
another one later.
All right, we'll be right back.
Okay, and we are back with an Askew View podcast. So we've been spending this time talking about Clerks II. I want to take a sec to dive into the incredible soundtrack that this movie has. I mean,
it's amazing. It feels like a Gen X love letter. It really does.
It really does, and it's. I mean, because you know, I mean, the movie opens with Talking Heads, Nothing But Flowers, and it's honestly, it's one of my favorite opening sequences to a movie.
Just
this
beautiful.
Movie in particular. Yeah, I mean, this movie has probably my favorite opening and favorite closing to a movie ever. Just with the way that the music.
I could see that.
Yeah, with the way that the music is set up, and like just the way that the way that the whole thing is set up and blocked and shot, and just the way that the music kind of complements the scene, it's beautiful. But when the movie opens and we see, after the quick stop burns down, and then we see that little. It's a little driving montage where Dante goes to pick up Randal, and as they're heading to work at the movies, they're passing all these different fast food places. They pass, you know, and it's in conjunction with the lyrics to the song. Like there's there's a lyric, "This was a Pizza Hut, now it's a peaceful oasis," as they drive by.
And it's just perfect. It just this is one of the few. All right, so he's always had good soundtracks. We talk about that, especially with like Mallrats and Chasing Amy and stuff like that. The soundtrack is great, but in here it seems to be a key player in the film. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the opening and the closing, they're a part of the movie. They're not just random cool songs. They make you feel things. Exactly.
And I mean, especially the scene in this movie that always gets me is when after Dante finds out he's going to be a dad, and Becky ends up leaving the store, and he goes after her to follow her, and there's just that whole big montage of Dante wondering what he's going to do. Everybody's wondering what they're going to do. Randal is sitting in the store.
The reflective.
And it's over the song playing over that is a Smashing Pumpkins 1975.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's another Gen X staple. It really is. I mean, to pull those people in, it just feels like Gen X. And by that point, by 2006, 2007, Gen X is a generation behind at this point.
Yeah.
So it's very almost nostalgic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was, it is really nostalgic, and this is kind of, I mean, now we live in a very nostalgic world. We're getting all these reboots and revivals and everything, but this was a time when there really wasn't any of that. Once it was done, it was done. There was no real big nostalgia culture at this point.
Yeah, but no, I mean the soundtrack really does. I mean, it moves the story forward in a way that really good filmmakers do, even when it's almost a satire. Like we talked about this earlier, the raindrops falling on my head scene is very much a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I mean, it's a homage.
It really the go-kart scene, and then there's also another really random addition. I thought is pretty much every time we see Jay and Silent Bob, it's a King Diamond, just this crazy 80s metal, It's like,
all right, well, and then let's go back to the one scene everybody remembers from this movie, the dance scene. They almost out of nowhere. If you told me that a Clerks film would have a dance sequence in it, I wouldn't have believed you, but it completely works. That's also the moment where I absolutely fell in love with Rosario Dawson. I didn't really know much of what she had done before that, but I was hooked from that moment forward.
This was the movie that made me fall in love with Rosario. Yeah, I mean, she had had a lot of work before this, but it's this was the movie that really introduced me to her, and it's that whole dance sequence set to ABC by the Jackson 5, and it's really that just that whole moment, just seeing Rosario dancing and Dante watching her because she's trying to teach him to dance during this song, and then during pretty much it ends up infecting the whole cast. I mean, everybody inside the restaurant,
even
is
the
dancing, everybody in the parking lot. Yeah, and there's a random nun that's dancing.
Which I don't know, strangely ended up being a backdoor, I don't know, callback to Dogma too, because Jackson 5 showed up in Dogma when the Mewes dancing, and that's for me that's where I connected those scenes.
That's true. Yeah, Candy Girl. Yep, that's right. Yeah. So Kevin is so clever with these little callbacks here and there. It's crazy. But and I also wanted to touch on another really great moment. Because we did mention the closing of the movie. Just I feel like this was a really perfect song choice for the closing of this movie, because I mean at the end of the movie,
Stone Temple Pilots.
They've renovated it. They're everything is basically Dante's last line is today's the first day of the rest of our lives, and the camera just kind of pans back into black and white like it's the same, and you see their faces drop, like they're like, oh shit, what did we just do? And the song that's playing that whole sequence is Misery by Soul Asylum, which if people don't know, Soul Asylum did the closing theme to the first movie, Can't Even Tell.
That's right, Soul Asylum. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, but Soul Asylum also. Well, Soul Asylum's frontman Dave Pirner, he actually scored Chasing Amy. So Soul Asylum's been a big part of the View Askewniverse for a while now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice touch all around. And I got teary-eyed a couple of times watching this movie, and this wasn't the kind of film I expected to get teary-eyed during. You're expecting, like, the first Clerks is essentially nonstop jokes. But this, he backloads it with so much heart that even within the jokes, there's so much going on there. And when the camera pans back at the end and you've got Soul Asylum playing, there's just something... I mean, you and I talk about this constantly. Neither of us were a part of that era, of the first Clerks era, but you feel it. You feel like you were.
Yeah. Definitely, and it's I mean, yeah, that's the thing about these movies, you know, and that's why they've always appealed to me. I mean, it's like, yeah, they were. I mean, I was just an infant when the first Clerks came out, but I mean, it's like I wasn't necessarily part of that generation, but at the same time, you know, those movies still did find a way to speak to me. I mean, Mallrats definitely did. I mean, I wasn't really a mall kid in the 90s, but I mean, the early 2000s, you know, like, yeah, I mean, we still, at that point, I mean, you know, the internet had gone on at that point, but it wasn't as much of as a thing as it is now. I mean, we couldn't carry it in our pockets or anything, you know, so, you know, I mean, it's really, you know, so it's, those movies still did find a way to be able to speak to me. Like, it's, I don't know, Kevin just has this thing about him, you know, that speak to kind of the youth.
No matter how old he gets, it still speaks to the youth. And he continues to do that. But as he turns, you know, from a kid to a father, it's still kind of, he still gets it. He's one of the few people that still does and doesn't feel like it's pandering at all. Now, like, oh, you're such a cute little kid. I'll just tell you about what happened to me and go on and expect you to know and care. He at least tries.
Yeah, he does. He really tries to speak to you, have a conversation with you, like, you know, through the film. And not only that, but I mean, that also speaks to who Kevin is as a person. I mean, that's who he is. If anybody ever has the chance to actually meet him and speak to him in real life, that really is the kind of guy he is. So it's, you know, he really puts everything that's him is what you see on that screen.
That's nice. That's rare. Well, I guess speaking of that, he calls Clerks II his personal favorite film. And why? I mean, I can kind of see that because it's definitely one. I mean, next to maybe Chasing Amy, as strange as that is, it's definitely his most autobiographical. But I mean, why? Let's dive a little bit deeper into that because it's worth noting because he's made quite a bit of films at this point, and why this one is his own little love letter to himself for once.
Yeah, and it kind of it really was. It's a love letter to himself, to his life, to his family, his daughter. His, you know, it's to everybody in his life at that point. Because that, and I feel like it makes sense because I mean, like why? Well, I mean, and this is me speaking like pre-reboot because you know, reboot really kind of does the same thing all over again.
It does.
But this one, like, you know, pre-reboot, this was kind of Kevin wanting to, because I mean, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was sort of a love letter to himself, but it was a goofy, you know, like funny love letter.
It had some heart, but it didn't have nearly as much heart. Like, I'm never gonna cry at the end of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Exactly.
Or anywhere in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I don't think I'm likely to like, oh, that was so touching. Oh my God.
Yeah, no.
but there are a couple of times in here where like, oh, yeah. It just kind of gets to you. Like we said at the very beginning, that drive montage to Talking Heads. Nothing has even happened yet. And I already know I'm in for like a touching film.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that alone just kind of sets everything up. And then I feel like this movie, well, this one and Chasing Amy are probably my two favorites because Chasing Amy kind of did a really good job of balancing the humor and the love stuff. Even though the love stuff, especially near the end, kind of gets a little bit more heavy. This one is sort of more of that. This Clerks II is sort of more of like the perfect balance. Like it has the love stuff in there as well, the romance, and and just as much funny to back that up with. So it really is sort of the perfect balance all the way through.
Because I think he's really talking about something we've talked about this a little bit, he's qualified to talk about. The problem with Chasing Amy was he wasn't really qualified to talk about the whole LGBTQ community. I mean, it was great. He made a fantastic film, but he wasn't necessarily the guy to tell that story. That's something to even bring up in Reboot. You know, like he's at least honest enough to be aware of it. But this is a story he could tell. Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, it really, I'm trying to find the right way to really say this. It really just encapsulates, you know, just what it really means to be a friend and what it means to, you know, also be a friend, be a boyfriend, be a and sort of to a lesser extent because the kid's not here yet, but when you're learning that you're becoming a father, it's kind of
right.
This is a movie about dealing with
the kid was there. Hurley is in Clerks II.
Oh yeah, Harley is in Clerks II. Yes.
In fact, Hurley and his wife are both. Yeah. I mean, not key characters. His wife is a key character. Hurley has a nice moment. Yeah. But
yeah, and it's crazy. That's another thing that if I can also just say that good on you, Jennifer Schwalbach. Like props to Kevin's wife, Jennifer Schwalbach, for being for actually really, because I think this was. I mean, she was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but I mean, she didn't really. I mean, she was one of the girls in that, but she didn't really speak much in that film. And I think that may have been her only acting credit prior to this. And she plays an actual role in this movie and does a really good job doing it. So it's that's one of another things that I really admire about Jennifer is she wasn't an actress or anything prior to meeting Kevin. She was a journalist for USA Today, entertainment journalist, and that's actually how they met. She was interviewing him. So it's she had no intention of being like on this aspect of the industry, but she ends up playing a major supporting role in this film, and and a lot of people remember it and remember her in it, because she really stood out in the movie. So it's, and I just want to, give props to Jennifer Schwalbach for.
Really, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's usually clear when someone isn't an actor, like the way they read lines, the way, like, no matter how you shoot it, they're not going to be a good actor. But she's a good actress. She is.
Yeah,
she takes the lines she has and she uses them well. Even in Strike Back, and she's playing up against like Sean William Scott and a bunch of other fairly Ali Lauder, stuff like that. People that were big at the time. She's going head to head with them. I never would have known.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't. I mean, the first 1,000 times I saw Strike Back, I would have realized it myself.
Oh, yeah. I honestly, up until recently, I didn't know that information. I just assumed that she was an actress that he fell in love with and married. But the story behind that is way more interesting.
Yeah. It's crazy how these things end up turning out. And he actually, and also, I mean, I feel like it was really good for them to, because he had wanted Jennifer to play the part of Emma from the very beginning, but a lot of people ended up, finding, they ended up criticizing him for that, like, oh, you can't cast your wife in a part just because she's your wife, blah, blah, blah. I think He Who Must Not Be Named criticized that, and at the Weinstein Company. But it's like Kevin actually got some backlash for that, but he was like, hey, this movie is about making a movie with my friends, and my wife is my best friend. I want to have her with me. So
I mean, it's really not all that different from. I mean, if you're making a movie with your friends, that's Mallrats, that's Clerks, he's not doing anything wildly different.
Yeah, and it's really just kind of the same. And I mean, he has a lot of the same people, even if they aren't playing the same characters. I mean, Jason Lee pops up in this, but he's not playing Brody or Banky in this one.
Right.
And Ben Affleck, pops up as just a random customer.
Just a guy. I think his title is Gawking Guy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then Ethan Suplee has a small little bit in here too, but he's not playing Willem again. He's just kind of a random kid. But that's actually something that I thought is really fun. The credits for this movie, him and Jake Richardson reprises his role as the kid from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
I thought so. Yeah, he aged a little bit, so it was a little harder to tell. But I had a feeling it was him.
Yeah, but it's him. Yeah, and actually, what's funny is Ethan Suplee's part was originally supposed to be both of the kids, the same two kids, but the other one, Nick Furlinger, he kind of disappeared, I think, at that point. Like, they just didn't know his information and couldn't get a hold of him. So so they ended up having Ethan Suplee do that part. But that's what it was supposed to be initially, was the same two kids after they'd grown up a bit. But what I think's funny about it, though, is they're credited as Teen 1 and Teen 2. Like,
when Ethan Suplee is very clearly not a teen by this point. I think he was a teen in Mallrats.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah, I mean, maybe.
Teenager and 40-year-old.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like, whoa, these guys are. Yeah,
it's already in the credits. We'll just leave it. No one will notice.
Yeah.
But I mean, what this boils down to is, and we keep coming back to this. This isn't all right. So let's start. I mean, this really isn't the end, though, for Clerks. I mean, as we've seen announcements, Clerks 3 is potentially coming. Is that a good idea? I mean, it's really hard to tell. Given the way this ended, as much as I want to see more Clerks, I don't know if it's the right move.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm super biased, so I'll go to the grave saying we always need more movies with these characters. But,
and I'm not against the Clerks trilogy. I think that's awesome. But like, their stories, they've covered so much ground. Do we need to go back to the well for that again?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's another thing, because like I feel like is it necessary? Like, do we need it? Probably not. Honestly, I mean, that argument could be made about Reboot too. I mean, and Kevin's even said, no one asked for this movie, but, except Jason Mewes. But it really, I don't know. It's just, I feel like with a lot of Kevin's stuff, it usually does sound like, no one asked for this. Why are you doing this? And, Kevin's response is always, well, why not? I'm going to go to
Tusk as an example on that one.
Exactly. Tusk is the prime example of that. And then Yoga Hosers right after that.
Probably Yoga Hosers, too.
Yeah, but...
Or anything with the Johnny Depp detective in there. Just, I'm staying away from it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like just because only because now I know what Kevin said this, so it's okay to talk about. But what the proposed story of Clerks 3 is going to be is they're recycling he's sort of recycling an old plot point that was going to be used for the animated series, and like what this is it's. Basically what's going to happen is, and it's also sort of partly inspired by Kevin's real life as well. Apparently Clerks 3 is going to open with Randal suffering a massive heart attack and almost dying.
Oh, okay. So that's familiar ground.
Similar, yeah. So that like the movie's going to open with that, but he'll survive. But then he kind of has this artistic epiphany of I've lived my whole life and I don't really have anything to show for it. Dante's got a wife and kid now. I don't. I don't really have any of my family left. I don't really have any kind of legacy. And I've just been sitting around this video store watching other people's movies my whole life. Why don't I make a movie of my own? So him and Dante, after that, they decide to make a movie in the stores. So essentially, they're making Clerks.
Right.
And it's
which is extremely meta.
Yeah, it's extremely meta. So it really, I mean, when I heard Kevin explain that, I was like, I really want to see this movie. I feel like
I admit, I was on the fence until he described it. It's just, I started to wonder if it's a good idea. I mean, because Reboot was amazing, but it did kind of show his age. They keep talking about how old they are and things like that, and that's going to be an issue with Clerks 3.
Yeah, just I mean, I feel like this movie, it will definitely show the ages of the characters. We'll see that kind of full, because I mean, at this point they're all approaching 50. So,
right.
It's going
to be a slightly different perspective than when they were 22.
Yeah, and I'm also curious after Reboot, because I know Jay and Bob will be back for Clerks 3, but I'm wondering, I'm like, well, what extent will Jay and Bob be back, and will they just kind of will they just kind of pull a Clerks II where, Clerks II doesn't really reference it doesn't really reference the, like Justice or any of the stuff that happened in Strike Back really, in Clerks II. So I'm wondering, like, if they'll just kind of do that the same with how, they handle Reboot. Because in Reboot, we find out Jay has a daughter. And, in this movie, in Clerks 3, I'm like, well, is Harley going to come back and play Millie in Clerks 3? Or are they just going to kind of ignore that? Or, so not sure how
it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But,
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's fantastic because the View Askewniverse keeps growing. Still, decades later, it keeps growing.
And it's it keeps going, and that's one of the things I really dig about this, and it really makes sense to keep going. And Kevin himself has even said, he wants to keep going with these characters now. He had it in his head before. I have to move on. I have to get away from these guys. But he's like, but now I just want to keep making new shit. And he's like, and I want to play with my old toys again. So I'm really grateful that I get to do that, and it's. He wants to open the old toy box and create. So right now, Clerks 3 is in the pipeline, as well as Mallrats 2, Twilight of the Mallrats, and those are the next two coming up. And I know he's also actually, I should probably bring this up. I don't think we talked about it, but I don't think I've said so on the podcast yet. Recently, Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson at a convention at the Comic-Con somewhere, they had mentioned that. Kevin is currently in talks with ABC to bring back Clerks, the animated series. So
that's going to be fascinating.
So I'm like, I really, really hope that. I'm thinking those, like, since they're talking with ABC, though, I'm like, this has to end up on somewhere like Hulu or something like that, because I highly doubt Disney Plus is going to take the Clerks.
Probably not. Hopefully they learn their lesson. But we thank you so much for joining us on this journey. There's always more to talk about, and we look forward to you joining us as we go down the View Askew road.
Next up, we this was actually we actually still do have Reboot, but after that, that'll be kind of the closing of the View Askewniverse for this point, and then we'll get to talk more about the films that were set outside of the View Askewniverse. So, and there's actually a lot of pretty good ones, so we're excited to tackle those.
So thank you so much, and we can't wait to have you join us next time.
So we'll see you next time. This has been our Askew View.